Okay, so we've all heard the bad news, right? Our oceans are in trouble. Those beautiful, vibrant coral reefs, they're fading away. It's a tough story. But what if I told you there's a flip side, a story of hope? What if we could actually rebuild those underwater cities? Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today, the incredible science of coral planting. I mean, look at this. It's straight out of a science fiction movie, isn't it? But here's the thing. This is not fiction. This is happening right now. Scientists, volunteers, whole communities, they're turning this very question into a reality. So the big question is, how on earth do you plant a forest under the sea? Well, let's get into it. All right, first things first. Before we get into the how, we really need to understand the why. Why is this work so incredibly vital? To get there, we got to start by clearing up a pretty common misunderstanding about what corals even are. Yeah, believe it or not, these amazing, complex structures, they're not plants. They're not just colorful rocks. They're actually colonies of tiny, tiny animals called polyps. And over thousands, literally thousands of years, these little builders create the largest living structures on our entire planet. You can even see them from space. How cool is that? And these structures they build, they are basically the bustling cities of the ocean. Get this, a staggering 25%. That's a full quarter of every single species in the sea depends on coral reefs for some part of its life. Just let that sink in for a second. If these reefs disappear, we're talking about putting a quarter of all marine life at risk. That's huge. And look, this isn't just about the fish. This comes right back to us, here on land. Healthy reefs, they give us oxygen to breathe and food to eat. They're the foundation for fisheries that feed millions of people. They literally act like natural seawalls, protecting our coasts from storms. And scientists are even finding new medicines in them. So yeah, they are absolutely essential for our survival too. Okay, so we've established they're in trouble, and we know how important they are. The question is, what can we do? How do we help them recover? Well, it turns out the best way to think about it is something we all understand: gardening. Yep, underwater gardening. It's often called coral planting, and it's a very hands-on way to restore reefs. The idea is simple. You take small pieces from healthy corals, you let them grow in a safe spot, kind of like a nursery, and then you plant them back onto a damaged reef to help it heal and regrow. And the process itself is really systematic. It breaks down into three basic steps. First, you carefully collect small pieces or fragments from a healthy donor coral. Think of it just like taking a cutting from a plant in your garden. Then you take those little fragments to a nursery to let them grow. And finally, when they're big and strong, they get outplanted or moved back onto the reef where they're needed most. And this is what one of those nurseries can actually look like. See those little coral fragments hanging there? They're secured on these structures that people call coral trees. It's the perfect spot for them. They get lots of sunlight, good water flow. Basically, it's a safe, protected environment where they can grow strong. It's just like raising saplings in a greenhouse before you plant them outside. So once those corals have grown up a bit, it's planting day. Divers will super carefully take them to their new home on a damaged reef, and they'll attach them using something as simple as a zip tie or maybe a special underwater glue. The whole point is to give them a solid foothold, a stable base so they can start growing and, begin rebuilding that reef. But here's the thing. Planting them is really only half the job. I mean, any good gardener knows you can't just plant a seed and walk away, right? You have to check on it. And it's the same here. Scientists and volunteers have to constantly monitor their work to make sure these new corals are actually thriving. And that's where the serious science comes in. Because this is the critical question, isn't it? You can go out and plant thousands and thousands of corals, but if they don't survive, well then what was the point? So how do you actually know if it's working? How do you measure success? Well, the whole monitoring process has some really clear goals. Teams of divers go back regularly to check on the planted corals. They're looking at their overall health, seeing how well they're bouncing back from stress, and keeping a sharp eye out for any warning signs. Things like disease, or that one thing we all dread seeing, coral bleaching. And this is a really cool way they do it. On the right, you see that stark white coral. That's a bleached coral, a clear sign that it's in big trouble. So, how do you measure that scientifically? You use the tool on the left, a standardized color chart. It's simple but effective. By matching the coral's color to the chart, they can get an objective score for its health. This lets them track its progress or decline over time. Okay, so this all sounds amazing, and it is. It's incredibly promising. But we also have to be realistic here. Coral planting is a really powerful tool in our toolbox, but it's not perfect. It comes with some pretty significant challenges. So let's break it down. On the one hand, the benefits are huge, right? You're actively rebuilding habitats, you're bringing back that coastal protection, and you're supporting the whole ecosystem and the people who rely on it. But the challenges are just as real. Survival rates can be all over the place. It all depends on the coral species, the water temp, pollution, and let's be honest, this whole thing takes a lot of people, a lot of time, and a lot of money. And maybe most importantly, it doesn't fix the bigger problems. And that brings us to the most crucial point of all. Coral planting is not a magic bullet. It's not a get out of jail free card. Think of it more like first aid. It's an emergency intervention. For this to have any real long-term success, it absolutely must be combined with the bigger fight, the fight against climate change, pollution, and overfishing. You just can't have one without the other. They have to go hand in hand. Which brings us to maybe the most important part of this whole story, because this isn't just about scientists in labs or divers in the ocean. This is about all of us. It's about a global community, and believe it or not, there's a role for every single one of us to play in this. You can think of it as being a coral guardian. And there are so many ways to do it. If you're lucky enough to live near the coast, you could volunteer with one of these planting programs. You can support marine parks. And hey, even if you're just visiting on vacation, the small stuff adds up to a huge difference. Never, ever touch or step on coral. Make sure your boat captain isn't dropping anchor on a reef. And the easiest one of all, pack out your trash. Simple. Because in the end, it really all boils down to this one simple, powerful idea. The fate of these vibrant underwater cities, it's tied directly to our own fate. When we work to rebuild and protect them, we are in a very real way working to protect ourselves. So the real question is, what part are you going to play in this story?